Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. Yeah, it's just one big state-sponsored network. CBS, Fox News, CNN. It's all the same. It's all government propaganda. Stacy Herbert.
Well, it's more than government propaganda. It's military, industrial, and banking industrial complex propaganda. And we see that in this first headline. CBS didn't mention Ron Paul once during an entire political segment. So we're going to turn to this clip from CBS, and this is on the eve of the New Hampshire primaries.
Expectations are high in what has become Romney's adopted home state. A new Suffolk University poll shows him with a commanding lead in New Hampshire at almost 30 points above his rivals. At the same time, Newt Gingrich and John Huntsman have faltered.
What comes next? We're going to have mourners in front of the tomb of the dead American media outlets wailing like at the Kim Jong-un funeral. Oh my God, American media is dead. You know, this is absurd. And of course, Obama doesn't say anything about it. He's like...
Well, Max, Obama really has no place to even get involved in the media. The media should do this themselves. But let's look at the financial papers. This is Bloomberg News, their front page. Romney rivals turn to South Carolina crossroads after losses. Notice in the picture, again, who is missing from the photo but Ron Paul. And they even have Rick Perry, who I say is the Vermin Supreme of the Republican Party. Rick Perry received 0.7% of the vote in New Hampshire. In the Democratic primaries, there were also Democratic primaries in New Hampshire, Vermin Supreme got 1.4% of the vote.
Well, yeah, Bloomberg, of course, they have gone down because Michael Bloomberg crossed over. He's a politician now. So he's set up the Bloomberg boxes to omit certain facts and figures and information that would get in the way of his political aspirations.
But it's also more than that. It's the markets are also becoming tools of propaganda. As you have pointed out yourself on our site and other places, Max, intrade.com gives a price. And in fact, there's been a recent study which showed to Republican voters, they showed them in-trade prices, and in 35% of the cases, they changed their vote to the one who had a higher price on in-trade.
Right, it's price propaganda. It's using behavioral economics to influence people's reactions and their actions. And if you can engineer a price, you can engineer an action. The markets are no longer about supply and demand. It's no longer about price discovery. It's no longer about the invisible hand. It's about pre-programming price points that will create actions in the population that you can then turn into inside information and market manipulation and political power and influence.
I mentioned Vermin Supreme. I want to cut to a clip here, and it gives an indication of why the media might be ignoring Ron Paul.
My name is Vermin Supreme. I'm a friendly fascist. I'm a tyrant that you can trust. You should let me run your life because I know what is best for you. My primary policy positions are as follows. I stand for mandatory toothbrushing laws. And last but not least, free ponies for all Americans. Yes, it's the Free Pony for All Americans Job Act. Just think of the jobs that will be created when all Americans have ponies. Oh, yes, for sure.
I think this is the reason why we're ignoring him, because Ron Paul is exposing the lie that free ponies can be had for all, in particular, the baby boomers. If you look at the next headline, hey America, half of young voters just voted for Ron Paul. Half. So this is from Business Insider Henry Blodgett. He points out that 47% of voters under 30 voted for Paul in New Hampshire. The reason why? You don't have to be a genius to see that if our government continues on its present course, borrowing and spending way more than it takes in, the country is going to be screwed. Ron Paul acknowledges that, and Ron Paul's ideas, though radical in some cases, promises major change. Older voters, for obvious reasons, don't really care that the country's finances are unsustainable because they'll be dead by the time that comes around to pay for it.
Well, that's exactly right. They're hoping that they'll die before they have to pay these debts. That's their strategy. That's their democratic thought processing. Well, we'll be dead soon. So all these problems we don't have to worry about. Ron Paul is appealing to younger voters because the younger voters realize that he's their only hope in not being forced into debt slavery.
Well, it's also the fact that the baby boomers for 30 years now have relied on the Federal Reserve to pay for all of the wars that they want but they don't want to have to pay for. The suburbs that they want, the exurbs that the baby boomers want, but don't want to have to pay for with the real cost of oil. So they keep on printing money, printing money, printing money, and it's off balance sheet. Nobody gets taxed for it. But here, the younger generation who has the internet, they've grown up with the internet with access to information, which now they're trying to block. But the younger voters know that it's the Federal Reserve and the military-industrial complex that has benefited the baby boomers, they think, for quite a while, that they're going to now have to pay for it.
Well, it'll be a jolt to the system. Either the system collapses under the weight of unmanageable debt and chaos, in which case everybody is going to suffer tremendously, or there's a kind of a managed chaos, like we saw Paul Volcker in the 1970s raise interest rates to snuff out the problems of that era. Now, this is what Ron Paul is talking about. The young are able to absorb that shock. The old will not. They'll be, unfortunately, wiped out. But the young want that as opposed to being toured into debt slavery.
And they want a change from the system. The younger obviously don't want the system to continue as is, and the baby boomers want to continue with the status quo. But I'll show you the next headline, proof of this intergenerational warfare, this changing dynamics in the population of America. You're now more likely to die from swallowing your own vomit than from murder. For the first time in nearly 50 years, homicide is not one of the top 15 causes of death in America. The 15th most common cause of death? Pneumonitis. Seen mainly in people 75 and older, it happens when food or vomit goes down the windpipe and causes deadly damage to the lungs.
Well, it's kind of like a 1960s thing, isn't it? Isn't this how Jimi Hendrix met his end?
It's exactly the same baby boomers, but what they're saying is that the fact that murder is not even in the top 15 anymore is a sign that the population is aging, because murder tends to happen with young men, you know, very testosterone-driven, murdering each other, but now they're aging instead of dying on their own vomit.
Yeah, and also there seems to be right now a reprieve in the actions by those very young people who have been disenfranchised in taking matters into their own hands against the banksters. So there's a bit of a pause there.
And talking about choking on your own vomit, Blackstone turns hostile on website names. So Blackstone Group, run by Steven Schwartzman, has been quietly acquiring hostile web domain names in an attempt to head off online criticism at a time when political rhetoric in the U.S. is building against private equity firms. So I mention this because Steven Schwartzman in this photo looks like he's choking on his own vomit.
We should be so lucky. Well, yeah, I mean, these guys are trying to buy up the domain names like Steven Schwartzman sucks. And we saw this with Brian Moynihan. Remember at Bank of America? He was very paranoid about people buying Brian Moynihan sucks, Brian Moynihan's a douche, you know, Brian Moynihan steals everybody's money, .com, .net, .org. And so he bought all those out, hoping that this would stop the hordes from chasing him down like a dog and beating him. But Schwartzman, good luck with that. They call it private equity. But of course, the history of so-called private equity goes back to the 1980s and Michael Milken and leveraged buyouts and the corporate raiders of that time, Ivan Boesky, Dennis Levine. And they had to rebrand themselves in this new era as friendly private equity. But they're just asset-stripping whores like Mitt Romney over there, Bain Capital, or Steve Schwartzman at Blackstone. They're just asset-stripping whores. They add no value to the... As a matter of fact, the people who participate with these guys in their deals, they lose money compared to the market averages overall. They're losers.
Steven Schwartzman has said recently that he was, quote, concerned about politically motivated attacks on private equity if Mitt Romney, founder of Bain Capital, becomes the Republican nominee for president. Well, a user on MaxKeiser.com, like I said, information is available online, and this is why the likes of Steven Schwartzman, Christopher Dodd, Barack Obama want to shut down the internet. So a user named user2323 says, quote, in much the same way, should we be concerned about politically motivated rewards to private equity if Mitt Romney, founder of Bain Capital, becomes the Republican nominee for president?
Right. If Mitt Romney becomes a Republican nominee, it's like shining a light on all these cockroaches like Steve Schwartzman. And they don't want to be out in the light. They want to be in the dark, doing their evil private equity deals that strip mine the economy recklessly, like $2 whores. They don't want any light shined on them. Steve Schwartzman, you'reanidiot.net, go away and jump off a building and save humanity, the excesses of your existence.orgnet.
But as I said before, he's just the mere reflection of the society itself that is choking on its own vomit, literally. And they don't want the youth to know about Ron Paul and his promise to get rid of all of those people choking on their vomit.
So you're saying that Steve Schwartzman is the walking personifications of society's tendency now towards swallowing its own vomit?
That's correct.
.net.
And then, again, final headline in this first section here, Max, why banks back SOPA, the Bring Chinese Internet to America bill. Because Section 105 grants immunity to service providers for taking voluntary action to stop infringement. And importantly, there are no counter notice rules or anything requiring any process for those cut off to be able to have any redress whatsoever. So somebody like Steve Schwartzman could send a notice to a search engine like Google and say, remove maxkeiser.com from all of the search engine results on Steve Schwartzman. And they're granted immunity if they take it down, because there's no recourse for you then as well. So they just need to take it down as soon as they receive just a legal letter from Steven Schwartzman's lawyers. And they will take it down. There's immunity granted to them in the SOPA bill.
Yeah, well, they can't take this show down. It's outside of Steve Schwartzman's purview as a kleptocrat in America. Also, my Twitter icon on my Twitter account at Max Keiser has Stop SOPA on the image. So follow me on Twitter. You should, to help stop SOPA.
But again, you know, I think it's really important. We can't dismiss this for the audience here, that this is, they think, oh, it's all about protecting those artists, those cultural icons, those people who bring you art and culture. It's about protecting Steven Schwartzman from letting the audience, letting the population know that StevenSchwartzmanSucks.com.
Don't go away. We're coming right back with Stacy Herbert right here in the Keiser Report. Stay right there.
Russia is that so much as I know I am, which of course he's wrong.
Has any influence?
Recasting America's global military strategy, or just more of the same. Barack Obama's new vision for the Pentagon is aimed at saving money.
There are those who desperately need it to survive.
These oil companies, they can give money to one local chief or one government official, and it suppresses the cries, the rights of the people. So it's new colonialism.
Those who don't get their share of the cake.
Every day by day, they are loading gas to other foreign countries. $1 million, but nothing, one naira self. The community nearby the terminal will not achieve anything from the company, from Mobile.
And those who suck it out to prosper.
It's sad, you can say it's unfair, probably not proper, but life is not fair.
No one can live without it. In one of the largest blood banks in the world. Blood of Nigeria. On RT.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. We're still with Stacy Herbert. Stacy, tell me more.
Well, Max, in the first half we were talking about the elites, the neo-feudal lords of our world, shutting down the internet and trying to prevent you from gaining knowledge about the true situation of the banking industrial and the military-industrial complex. So I want to look at where they are imparting knowledge and how they're doing it. Georgia school math assignment references slavery beatings. So 9 teachers in a Georgia school came up with these math questions for their students. To teach them, they said, both math and history lessons. The first question on this homework assignment asked, each tree had 56 oranges. If 8 slaves picked them equally, then how much would each slave pick? The other asked, if Frederick Douglass got 2 beatings per day, how many beatings did he get in 1 week?
Right. Well, there's a deep racist vein in America. We see this at the death penalty. Troy Davis recently, young black kid, executed by the state because he was black. And this is predominant throughout American society, but it's not confined to just black people. Of course, I saw something interesting on the news. I don't know if you saw this. It was, you can look it up, on the search engine, this story, how students in America are now pre-selling 20 years of their income, 5% of their income for 20 years to get the money to go to college. So it's soft slavery for white people. And then they've got the hard slavery for the black people.
Well, I think actually if we look around the world, we'll find a lot of different colors, yellow, orange, purple, green. Everybody is a slave unless you're a neo-feudal lord. And I think that's what part of the thing is, that they're just normalizing it and they're making it part of your everyday language of slavery. Indentured servitude will be next, like getting people used to the idea of being slaves. You could ask the same question. And I think they'll probably ask this question very soon in the Georgia school system. How many Chinese suicides does it take to produce 1 iPhone? That's a good question. With this headline here coming up, mass suicide protest at Apple manufacturer Foxconn factory. Around 150 Chinese workers at Foxconn, the world's largest electronics manufacturer, threatened to commit suicide by leaping from their factory roof in protest at their working conditions. Several reports from inside Foxconn factories have suggested that while the company is more advanced than many of its competitors, it is run in a military fashion that many workers cannot cope with.
Well, what's incredible about this story is that Apple Computer has $80 billion in cash on their balance sheet. They could, A, pay their workers so that they're not staging mass suicide rallies, or B, they could open a factory inside the United States and give jobs to the people who are buying the products or who are subsidizing the products so that people in foreign territories can manufacture the products. But having $80 billion in cash, first of all, it's illegal under SEC laws without paying a commensurate dividend. You can't hoard cash as a publicly listed company. It's completely, not that SEC law matters anymore, that anyone follows the SEC. But second of all, it's completely immoral, given the fact that you've got people killing themselves while they're hoarding cash. Why are they hoarding cash? Because Google might come out with a phone that they don't like, that they want some ridiculous reason. They don't even know why they're hoarding cash.
Like I said in the beginning about this intergenerational warfare, you have a population, the largest population, not only in size, physical size, but in the size voting bloc. And that's the baby boomer generation, who has an unsustainable lifestyle. They have exurbs to which they drive their SUVs, and therefore they vote for and want endless war that they don't ever want to be taxed on. And here, this is the same thing with their consumer society. They don't ever want to have to think about the true unsustainable costs. And if it takes 150 Chinese suicides, they'll take it. They don't care.
Well, yes, they're being consumed, to pick up on this theme of the show, they're eating their own vomit in a way, because the costs are being externalized, but that can only last for so long. Then the costs come ricocheting back full force in the form of a revolution, like we're seeing in countries around the world, social unrest, or higher interest rates, which, of course, that's the biggest joke of all, that interest rates are still near 0%, while all of these pressures like a steam kettle are building, which will result, of course, in a huge gap in interest rates suddenly, which will cause complete economic chaos.
The article notes that they were coaxed down after 2 days by the plant managers and the Chinese Communist Party, but there was also a net there because so many had committed suicide by jumping from the building previously. Now, I want to talk about the whole nation of America standing there on a ledge as well, basically threatening to commit suicide. But there's no net there. There's nobody there to catch them. China snubs Geithner on Iran oil. China gets cheaper Iran oil as U.S. pays tab for Hormuz patrols. Retired admiral warns U.S. policy benefits the Chinese. So everything America's doing to try to stop the inevitable collapse of their empire, as all empires have to collapse just because of the exact same military, industrial, banking, industrial complexes that run, whether it's the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, or the Roman Empire. Geithner had tried to get China to stop importing oil. They're like, China, please commit suicide. We know you already eat all of our vomit of these treasury bonds. If that's not suicidal enough, why don't you stop your imports? 15% of their oil imports come from Iran. And Geithner's over there trying to say, energy, the most crucial ingredient to any economy. Do without it, China. And they said no.
But, you know, it's economics or suicide. And you know who's really done a lot of work on this is Captain Paul Watson over there at the Sea Shepherd. He talks about the fact that the economies around the world have adopted this economics of suicide. For example, tuna, which is being fished into extinction, is driving the price of the remaining tuna to $600,000 or more for one tuna fish in Japan. And we see this all over the world. They're driving this consumer economy model into extinction. Not only extinction of the overfished population, the boreal forests where all the natural lumber comes from, the ozone layer, the air able to breathe, but now it's hitting populations of human beings. It's becoming Soylent Green, basically, for a profit.
Okay, so as I was saying, Geithner wants China to adopt the same suicide model. China says no. And in fact, as Ms. Shedlock points out here, China uses this, that America is standing at the ledge, saying, we're going to commit suicide. Come on up, China. Come on up and jump with us. No, China is actually saying, well, I'm going to get up to a 40% discount. I'm going to go to Iran and renegotiate because I know America's over there willing to commit suicide. And now, you know, I'm the only worker left.
Well, yeah, Iran is close to China, Russia. You know, this is where the U.S. model of shock and awe is going to die.
So the cost for maintaining this blockade on the Straits of Hormuz, the U.S. is bearing most of the cost of the air and sea patrols and surveillance of the Strait of Hormuz, through which transit 17 million barrels a day of crude, or 20% of the world's oil supplies. China, the #2 importer of oil after the U.S., enjoys protection for the shipping lanes without paying a cent. Retired Admiral Dennis Blair, a former U.S. Director of National Intelligence, said in an interview.
Well, the U.S. still thinks of Iran, China, Russia from 20, 25 years ago. They completely have discounted the idea that these countries have catapulted in growth and sophistication and allegiances over the past 10, 15 years. And the U.S. doesn't understand that, you know, when you attack Iran, you're attacking China, Russia at the same time. I mean, it's absurd to think that the U.S. is going to go in there blindly and step on an enormous, bomb of their own making.
Well, but let's talk about this as related to the rest of the stories we're talking about. There's a political element, and that's, you know, old school geopolitics. We're talking economics here and innovation. Because we're told in the West, give up your jobs because we're the innovation society. But here, we're on a single point of failure. 20%, they're saying, of the world's oil supply goes through this one point, and we can't live without oil. You know, we've had 100 years to come up with an alternative. Have we ever even thought about it? No. But the other point is that it's a perfect real-life analogy of what is the U.S. system towards SOPA, for example. They want to force all the traffic through one point so that their might can only restrict all access to it, and you must pay to get any access to that one point.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying, that it makes no sense in the context of a market that the agents, the actors like the U.S. would act as if, like they're doing, because it's market suicide.
Yeah.
But the market's died. You know, you don't have free markets. You don't have price discovery. The price of oil is determined by the paper market. Same thing for the price of precious metals. Same thing for markets across the board. It's determined by high algorithmic trading, frequency trading, by program trading, by market manipulation. They don't have a real price for oil. The true price of oil, given the externalities, the cost of cleaning it up, etc., would be already $200 to $250 a barrel. And that would have forced the U.S. to adapt 50, 40, 30, 20 years ago. Already, they would have already been into another century, but because they've been able to keep the price artificially low through market manipulation, through monetary manipulation, and through a foreign policy that doesn't respect anyone's human rights, they have put themselves in a position where they are incapable now of dealing with the fact that they've completely lost control of the oil market.
And again, going back to our very first headline where Ron Paul is the choice of those under 30, is this foreign policy in order to get free oil for the exurban living baby boomers. They know it's unsustainable. If you're not part of it, if you're outside the fishbowl, you can clearly see that the fish are living in the water and how they're living. The youngsters stuck outside the job market, stuck outside the opportunity market, and it's enslaved to student debts. They can see clearly, much more clearly than the baby boomers stuck in the exurbs, who would not be able to breathe without Iranian oil or Saudi Arabian oil or Middle East oil flowing to them. They think cheaply because they're not taxed on it. It's just inflation and monetary printing, and their wages, their real wages, going down for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and I make the following prediction, that one day when oil gaps open to $170 a barrel, policymakers will say it's the market. They'll blame the thing that, if they had embraced all along, would not have happened to begin with. Because then they'll use the mainstream media outlets like CBS and Fox News and CNN to carry this falsehood, this propaganda, and they'll have no opposing view. They'll have no debate about it whatsoever. It'll just be that Mr. Magical Market did this. We had nothing to do with it.
And then final headline here, Max, we're talking about the, standing on the ledge, committing suicide. So China looks at all of this. Right? They see that Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, comes to them and tries to ask them to commit economic suicide. China continues to buy gold in preparation of the end of the global dollar-based ecosystem. So mainland China gold imports from Hong Kong surged to 102,779 ounces from 86,000 in October. This is a 20% increase from the already high number seen in October and a 483% year-on-year increase. So they're getting ready for, they know what happens when somebody jumps without a net.
That's my agenda. Buy more gold. China, join me. All you other countries, join me. Buy gold. That's my agenda. This is my show, Keiser Report. Stacy Herbert, thanks so much.
Thank you, Max.
All right, that's it for this time, but we'll see you soon, so be there. If you want to send me an email, please do it so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.